What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers. Subscribe to our Patreon free for behind-the-scenes stuff. Arm yourselves. Fitting for this one, gaming stuff. We're talking about Beyond Citadel today. I've never played a shooter that handles quite like this, and it's one of the reasons I like it so much. This gameplay is from an extra level, and it's a bit bland compared to the rest of the game, but we're using it both because it doesn't give anything away, and also because this game is so gruesome. I want to be careful about what's shown, and this level is not especially gruesome. Let's start with the gameplay. The reason you buy this game, and the reason you come back to it, I just like picking up and playing this game, is the gunplay. You aren't just shooting and reloading your guns, you are handling your firearms. And there are plenty of games that approach firearms more like tools, but there's a balance between gamey shooter and reality sim that most games fall on one side or the other in. They can't find this happy medium, in which you feel like you're handling a firearm and also playing a game. Beyond Citadel finds that happy medium by paying close attention to distinct functionalities between firearms. For example, you get a lever action almost immediately. You need to work the lever between shots. You need to load each bullet manually, versus something like an automatic magazine-fed weapon like your .44 Magnum. It's like a super future deagle. If you reload while you have a bullet in the chamber, you don't need to charge it again. However, if you empty your magazine, leave it with nothing in the chamber when you reload, you do have to charge it. And that's something you have to think about, because if you pull the trigger after you've reloaded, after emptying everything, nothing's going to happen, it's going to click. And in addition to that, both a game mechanic and a recommendation or a reminder for you if you buy this game, if, when you're using a weapon with a magazine, you press R to reload normally the way you would in other games, you'll toss your magazine, and you have only so many magazines. What you want to do instead is press X to drop the magazine without throwing it, which is slower in terms of reloading, but you'll refill that magazine instead of needing to buy or find a new one. And your weapons degrade, which is a mechanic I'm, to my taste, personally not fond of, but I like it here, I appreciate it here at least, because it forces you to deal with jamming. And jams in Beyond Citadel are actually pretty fun. In most games with jamming mechanics, you just spam R until the jam is cleared and you can go back to playing the game totally normally. In Beyond Citadel, it's an entire process. First you get your jam, then you drop your magazine, then you fiddle with the slide or the charging handle or what have you until the jam is cleared, then you insert a new magazine, and then you charge it, and then you're good to go. And that sounds like it would be annoying, but in Beyond Citadel it works for two reasons. One, because so much attention has been placed on the handling of these firearms, engaging with them is part of what you're here to do. This is part of the fun. And two, Beyond Citadel it's interesting. On one level it's a tactical shooter, on another level it's a boomer shooter. And in the beginning it starts out as more of a tactical shooter and then becomes a boomer shooter as you become more powerful, but the reason I like it is these two levels are operating the entire time. If you're in a bad spot, you'll go back into tactical mode even if you're powerful because you'll need to, and at the same time, if you're on a roll or you get a power-up or something when you are not super powered yet, you can jump into boomer shooter mode. Or in other words, these catastrophic failures of your firearms don't interrupt the gameplay because there isn't one level of gameplay. When you need to slow down, there is an entire level and pacing of gameplay that you can fall into naturally. It's not an interruption. It's a change of pace. And I don't think I've played another game that does that. It's fun to run a weapon until it falls apart in your hands, both because this sort of slower gameplay is fun to engage in and the game is built to engage in it, but also because if you're doing this, you're doing it to be economical, and you should be economical because the game's resource economy is better balanced than it feels at first. And the economy at first feels not so good, not because the economy isn't good, but instead because you're trying to play it like Doom, and you're moving too fast, you've thrown away all your magazines, so you're working with one magazine that you are unloading and loading, and it's just a mess. You're in Doom mode, you need to be in Rainbow Six mode. At least until you become the Great Cleanser, wielder of the Sacred Irons, which is what they call the guns you use, which, again, perfect. These things do feel like sacred irons that you are caring for. If you're a gun person, you'll enjoy this game. No, it is not hyper-realistic, but it captures the feeling of handling firearms very nicely, both on that mechanical level and on that emotional level. How do you not get spiritual shooting something? Now, as we've mentioned already, the pace of the game picks up. You start creeping around cramped spaces and back alleys like you're in Pripyat, and you rise up to the point you are flying around a city with a jetpack, engaging in multiple sniper duels simultaneously with anti-tank rifles. A rifle you are mechanically pushed to be careful with, by the way, because unlike other bolt action or lever action weapons in the game, with your anti-tank rifle, you can accidentally cycle it multiple times and lose your precious ammunition, which you are wont to do when you're in the middle of a sniper duel, and you're antsy, but you need to be careful. No other weapon will let you fumble like that, but how perfect is it? It's the sniper. Their vehicle sections, which are all pretty good. All the vehicles have armor-piercing, high-explosive, anti-infantry weapons. Tons of different options. Think of them like gun puzzles. If you've ever played, and if you enjoyed, Terra Nova Strike Force Centauri, you'll feel right at home. It's that pseudo-milsim thing going on. Not even close to realistic, but it wants you to pay attention to the tools you're using, and that's an engaging way to play a game. And that level of detail and specificity goes beyond just handling your firearms or driving these vehicles. It's like Metal Gear Solid 3. Everything is a little bit fussy, but once you figure out that fussiness, it stops being fussy and becomes a way for you to use your character better. Not to mention the immersion. It's cool that for no reason other than fun, you can take off your helmet and go around shooting and fighting with no HUD, and then put your helmet back on and go through the entire boot sequence to get your armor up and running again. It's neat. Doesn't need to be there, but it's neat. You unlock your double jump immediately, you unlock your high jump, you unlock your air dash, and almost never do you need to use any of these things, because again, at first, you're by necessity moving slowly, but once you figure out how to work these mechanics into your routine, you get better and better. And then you remember there are other little mentioned but not forced upon you mechanics, which once you incorporate those, you're even better. With your, I think they call it the Whaler, it's your anti-tank rifle, they explain to you how to steady your weapon. First you crouch, then you aim down the sights, then you hold shift to hold your breath, which holding shift to hold your breath, not reinventing the wheel, but crouching restricts your movement, and you have to crouch to steady your scope. But then you realize you can do that with other weapons. So now, instead of using your precious anti-tank sniper, you are using your lever action as almost like a DMR to hit things further away while conserving your very valuable ammunition. And even these sorts of longer range gunfights, the weapons in this game are not hit scan, aside from the laser weapons. They also aren't the slow projectiles thing. They're one of my, or they use one of my favorite forms of ballistics in gaming, the very fast projectile. Once again, making what you're doing feel more real without going too far into the totally real direction. Far enough away and you'll need to arc your shots. And you'll be fussing over this and wanting to land headshots, meaning you'll want to get better with your gun, figure out how these ballistics work. Because while the game isn't super stingy with ammo, it's also not that hard to run out if you aren't being careful. And on that same note, every weapon has an alternate firing mode, or additional function, or special interactions with the environment. For example, the SMG is unique in that its alternate fire lets you shield yourself for a bit, and it functions normally underwater. And not all guns function normally underwater. Another example, you have grenades. Then you can fire these grenades from your storm rifle, which is, again, not crazy. But then you have a lever action pistol that you can also use to shoot grenades, and your pistol shoots these grenades further and more accurately than you can throw them, or than you can shoot them from your rifle, but it costs a bullet to shoot them that way, which is also neat. Bunch of different ways to skin a cat, but they all cost a little bit different, and they all perform a little bit different. You also have a kick, not outlandish. You have a drop kick. You see that in some games, but not everywhere. Still neat, high impact. Then you also have a flying halfway semicircle kick with both legs that, because you are a robot anime girl, you can use to bisect a not-so-robot anime girl. Which is a little bit of that gruesomeness, but we'll get to that. There is a bit to say about that. In these extra levels, you can find whetstones that make your melee weapons perform better, in addition to special perks that you'll want to get. You can also upgrade your weapons. This game uses the Lost Planet 2 weapon system, which I like quite a lot. So in your pistol category, you have a pistol category and you can carry one of 3 pistols. You have a rifle category, you can carry one of 3 rifles, etc. I hope you're seeing what this game's basic gameplay loop is trying to invite you into and get you hooked on. It's all very particular, and nothing works exactly the way something else does. And that sort of specificity is fun in its own right, but it contributes to your power growth, how powerful you feel, because once you've worked out what you like doing and how to do that, and then what you can do by playing into other weapons' particularities, the faster you can do these things. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and then you go from anime girl operator to death machine. Level design starts off slow, but once it starts opening up, once you have more of your movement abilities, once you have more of your weapons, you understand how to use them, level design gets really good. Audio is great, the guns sound good, there is excellent, uncomfortably excellent feedback, both visually and audibly, when you hit. It's surreal downing somebody, but then realizing they're not dead, they're just downed, but they're missing an arm, and they're reaching for their sidearm. They're blown apart, and then you put 2 through what's left of them, and then their chest opens up, and then their head goes flying. There's a red X, a really satisfying sound. Shit you can pick up goes flying out of them. It's sick, both in the this is sickening sense and the shit that's rad, that's fucking sick way. Which again sounds kind of typical, sounds like Hotline Miami shit, but it's not. We'll get there. Soundtrack is pretty good. Soundscape in general is pretty good. You can pick up different sorts of armor, and each armor sounds different when you're walking around. It's a neat touch. Makes you feel, again, more inside your character. Poor phrasing considering the subject matter, but it's thematic. Story is intriguing but a little bit unimpressive. If you've seen any Asian media that is into Abrahamic religion or Abrahamic themes, you've seen this before. It's interesting, it's intriguing, there are twists and turns, there are things to figure out, but again, you've seen this before, you've played games like this before, you will guess some things and probably be right. The translation is also in that weird spot. It's not a perfect translation into English. It's also not Chinese visual novel tier translation. So you'll understand what's going on. I divine cybermancy. That kind of translation. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on, but the translation is scuffed enough I'm not entirely sure. But fortunately, that's not why you're here. You are here to wield the sacred irons. And on that front, the game is delicious. This is one of those games you slowly get into, and then once it finally clicks, you realize if this game is, say, 16 hours long, that's not 300 hours long, and you want that 300 hours. Like Halo. People were saying the Halo open world, or the Halo Infinite open world was shit. I liked it because I like playing Halo. I like playing Beyond Citadel, and I want to play it more. There's tons of variety here. I mean, this level you're looking at plays nothing like any other level in the game. And while all levels have similarities, in the same way the firearms are particular and the mechanics are particular, the level design and the enemy design is particular. Levels might look similar, but none of them feel the same. There's even a blood callback. I must stop this train. It's also not annoying with references, by the way, which is one of my pet peeves. I don't like references. I don't even like homages all that much. Is it homage? It's homage, right? Homage? I'm not a big fan of the point and go, I know what that is, homage. There are homages in this game, but they're subtle enough you realize they're homages, which is, I think, the way you should do homages. This is a game made with love. The entire game is tasteful, which tasteful leads us into the last thing I want to talk about for a moment regarding Beyond Citadel. This is definitely a fetishy game. It's snuff, body horror, gore, viscera, objectification, dehumanization, sick shit. And if that's something that disturbs you, if that's something you find tasteless no matter what, then this is a game you'll want to stay away from because there's no getting away from it. However, as someone who is not sexually into this stuff, I think it's done tastefully. And it's done tastefully because it's thematic. And this is the way you know you're dealing with a fetish master, a kink connoisseur. At the highest levels of degeneracy, it's never about just shooting ropes everywhere. You are learning something about the universe using the detector Abrahamic God gave you. So while I know some people are jerking off to this, I'm not, but it's still making me think about the world. So a game like Hotline Miami will make you do all this fucked up stuff and then point the finger at you and judge you. Very clever. I'm appreciating beyond Citadel's handling of gore and violence, especially regarding women. Ooh, it's uncomfortable. Specifically because it isn't pointing the finger and trying to force you to reflect on your actions. There is a grinding dehumanization to the entire game. This is really fucked up, but this is the way it is, and these are the things that need to happen. If you didn't want your spine removed by an apathetic android girl's foot, then you shouldn't have been born into this life. If you didn't want your head smashed open like an egg after you've had your arms blown off, or your arm blown off, I should say, don't reach for your sidearm to try to take your last few heroic shots and save the people you care about. If you do that, you're asking to have your head stomped into sickeningness. The game communicates just how sick these themes are by making them so commonplace they're mundane. If you didn't want people brutalized with an axe, you shouldn't have made ammo so expensive. If you didn't want to bioengineer your people and close them in these robotic war tombs to fight the martyr, then you shouldn't have fought the martyr. You're dying either way. Why would you choose to mutilate yourself and still give yourself no chance of survival? It's sickening, but it contributes to this feeling of apathy and powerlessness this game, this story, and this world are going for. The game trusts you enough to draw your own conclusions. It's like Hemingway in that way, iceberg theory. It's why a game like Hotline Miami or like Spec Ops The Line didn't really do anything for me. At least on the moralizing front. Beyond Citadel is a lot more like Metal Gear Solid 3's Riverwalk. Except, the reason I think Beyond Citadel is unique and interesting in this killing is bad front is just how cold and mechanical it all is. Metal Gear says, this is bad. Beyond Citadel says, this is. It's a real kick in the dick, which is kinda what you feel like you need when you're playing this game, because you'll notice most characters are women, and that shouldn't be lost on you. And I haven't figured this game out. I'm not in a position to do a 3-hour critique, but there's a lot to think about here, and the gunplay, the mechanics, it's all so good, you'll stay here long enough to think about it. And I strongly recommend you do. I like this game a lot. I know there was a game that came before this one, I don't know whether or not they're connected, but the reason I didn't go in on that one was people were writing it off, basically. And there wasn't enough there for me to ignore the people writing it off. This game, I'm not seeing as many people write it off, and that's good. It looks like this one is going to get the attention it deserves. It's already getting the attention it deserves. Go into it thinking Tom Clancy, John Carpenter, Judith Butler, and I think you'll have a good time. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.